why don't you not grow your hair, or excuse me, not cut your hair between now and when you cross the finish line?
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race. The show that breaks down, builds up, gets you ready, and freaks you out for the highest and arguably hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country. Fatty here with the first bonus episode of Season 1. Just a little background here. The main episodes are all about how to know the course better, how to cope with the altitude, how to be faster and more fit, how not to throw up, stuff like that. These bonus episodes are because there's a lot more to the Leadville Trail 100 than just being fast and fit and smart. This is a race of stories, and these short little bonus episodes are to give us room to tell these stories. First though, this episode is brought to you by the Banjo Brothers. Tough, practical, and affordable, Banjo Brothers is Minneapolis-based and has the right bag for you, bags for bike packing, commuting, or racing the Leadville 100. I've had Banjo Brothers bags on my Leadville bike and all my other bikes for more than a decade. Whatever you need to carry on your bike, Banjo Brothers has a bag for it. Check them out at banjobrothers.com, and thanks to Banjo Brothers for supporting the show. So, this bonus episode is an interview with Dave Edwards. He's just a guy I met in 2014 during a pre-race clinic Rebecca Rusch and I put on. He was a friendly guy about my age, super excited about the race, and he had this amazing head of below shoulder length blonde hair. He'd been growing it out, Samson-like, for this race. His story and mine intersected again at the finish line of the race, but not the way that you'd expect. I think you're going to enjoy Dave's tale. It's a great story about a great guy who is in just a little bit over his head. Dave, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Hey, Fatty, it's great to be here.
So the first thing that made me sort of pick you out of the crowd, well, two things. You were wearing a Fat Cyclist jersey, which of course was flattering, but more importantly, you had rock star hair, and there was a story behind that.
Yes, there was.
Tell me the story behind your long hair.
Well, it's kind of a long story, Fatty, so I'll try to be brief a little bit. So prior to my 50th birthday, which I've now gone past.
That's well behind us.
Well behind. I was looking for something to do. I mean, I'm kind of a guy that likes to, put a challenge out there and just kind of gives me something to ride toward, kind of something to train for rather than just put out endless miles. And I decided that, I think doing Leadville would be cool. And so for my 50th birthday, I thought, I'm going to have that be my 50th birthday challenge. I've got a couple years to train for it. I had never ridden a mountain bike. I was strictly a road guy and thought, well, I kind of probably ought to figure this out and how to get on it. And I talked to my wife. She was like, that's a great plan. And she was a school teacher and I worked from home. So the original plan was that I was going to, that we'd go out for the 3 months and live, in Colorado, get used to the altitude, ride some really good mountain biking in Colorado versus what I had really available to me in Wisconsin. And at some point, I had to go out and buy a bike, had to kind of do all the thing, 3 months of living accommodations in Colorado. And my wife looked at me one day and she said, this is getting kind of expensive. This is quite the 50th birthday event you're putting on for yourself.
Could have bought a car.
Said, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. And she's like, what? How about for every dollar you spend, I'm going to spend an equal amount, but I don't want to ride up a mountain. I'm just going to have a party.
That is quite a party.
It is quite a party. And
a nice bike alone is a nice party.
And one day we were sitting on the couch and she looked at me and she goes, what? I have a solution to your problem. And I was like, what's that? And she said, well, rather than have a party, why don't you not grow your hair between now not cut your hair between now and when you cross the finish line. And if you grow your hair out, from right now until you cross the finish line, I won't have a party. And it took me about 5 seconds to do the mental math and go, that would be a really expensive haircut. I was like, I'm in. And from that point forward, and I had a relative buzz cut, so it was short. Sure. It wasn't like I was kind of had longish hair anyway. I was going from not quite as short as you wear yours, but fairly short, to going 2 years essentially without a haircut. So that was kind of the genesis. And there would be times where we would be in the house and she would walk by and she would just bend over and start laughing. She's like, this is the best decision, the best idea I've ever had. And because, I just would fight with it. When it started touching my forehead, I would go crazy, trying to get it in my helmet when I was riding. All of a sudden, my baseball caps don't fit. I've got to get my helmet I got to adjust. And it was really freaking me out because it had been like 25 years since I'd had anything but a buzz cut. And she just thought, what? This is the best thing ever. So she was supportive in that way, but she also got to get her own little form of enjoyment out of the whole training event.
For what it's worth, it looked great on you. So you grew your hair out. You're getting close to Leadville, the race day, but you had some sort of mental alarms, pre-race warning signals going off in your head as you got close. Tell me a little bit about those.
Well, it was, I went out rather than, our plan was to go out for 3 months, and then my wife changed jobs and things didn't work out. So we didn't do the 3 months out in Colorado.
Life happens.
But right. Life happens, and that's fine. But so I thought, I'll go out a week early. So I get out there, like Saturday or Sunday, and, I'm going to get ready. And there's Rebecca Rusch had talked about this hard paved trail around a 10-mile loop around Leadville. Mm-hmm. And she always said that she rode that as kind of a leg shakeout. And I thought, what? I'm coming from 875 feet of elevation to over 10,000 feet. I didn't want to go out there the very first day and just, climb Columbine. So I'll just ride that the first day, get acclimated. And so I rode that around. And it was a nice ride. But, the hills seemed harder than what I thought they ought to be. And the breathing seemed harder than I thought it ought to be for, a lot of the amount of effort I was doing. But I just kind of chalked that up to, first day, and I'm here, it's kind of, it's all kind of new.
Sure.
And then you and Rebecca put on, 4 or 5 days worth of riding different segments. The first one was Columbine, because I think the logic there was do Columbine first, get it out of the way, don't kill the legs too early. And so we go out there and we meet, and there's actually kind of a funny story around that whole event that I can get to a little bit later. But as we started climbing Columbine, all of a sudden, my heart rate was going up way faster. The aerobic fitness was not there, and I'm just thinking, oh, this is not shaping up like I thought it would. So I pulled over and said, let's not, maybe I went to the red zone too quick. Really, the first time I'd really ridden out there, and I thought I was really going at it too hard. I thought I'll just stop. You go your own pace. That's the nice thing about those rides. Mm-hmm. Nobody, you did what you could do. And so then I got on again. Rested 3 or 4 minutes, then hopped on the bike and kind of started going again. Thought, just temper it down a little bit. We don't need to go quite so hard. Same thing happened again. I thought, well, this is kind of odd. And then kind of did the same thing and thought, all right, I kind of was starting to do some mental calculations here, saying, well, what am I not doing, or what am I doing now that I don't normally do, or what am I not doing? Is my cadence too fast? Kind of, I know it's a climb, but I've ridden road bikes all my life. I've done mountain climbs on road bikes, so I kind of understand kind of getting into your climbing rhythm, and I thought I was in it, but man, I just didn't have the aerobic, the lungs for it. And then, so I tried it again, and the third time it happened again, and that's when the biggest alarm bell went off and went, yeah, you're not in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest problem here.
And, I feel bad hearing that, because everyone experiences exactly what you're describing. That is the magic of Columbine. It is once you get above 9,000 feet, every 1,000 feet you go up doesn't just become a little bit harder, it becomes exponentially harder. So the amount of difficulty that between 9 and 10,000 feet is not as bad as between 10 and 11,000 feet. And that's not as bad as between 11 and 12,000 feet. It's, it really does. It plays head games with everyone. I could have maybe diffused that for you if I had known that you were going through that, but it is a real thing. So
it definitely is a real thing. And you could have even told me about it ahead of time, but until you go out and you experience kind of what that feels like.
Yeah.
I just was like, wow, that is not something that I would have ever actually thought would have had as big of an impact as it did. And, so race day came, you guys had done a really good series on prepping, and it got a lot. And one of the things that both you and Rebecca were talking about is don't go out too hard too soon, and the flip side to that is you got to go out hard enough so you get to keep going. So knowing that I was in an area that I was not comfortable with, the climbing was going to be harder, the altitude was not my friend, I just wasn't there aerobically like I wanted to be. I thought, well, that's probably a good lesson. So I had that in the back of my head all the time. And in the corral start, I might have been in Frisco, Colorado, as far back as I was.
It's astonishing how far back that line goes. People don't realize it goes back for a couple of blocks.
It does, and and I was on the other side of Harrison Street, maybe 2 corrals back. Mm-hmm. It's a long way back if you're on your bike and you've got a big day ahead of you and you want to go when the gun goes off. But the gun goes off, and as a road rider, I've done a lot of starts like that. To me, that was, for me, the most comfortable part of the race. I've ridden in groups of thousands of people at a start like that and everybody going. And so I wasn't as nervous as a lot of mountain bikers are with that kind of start. I know Reba talks about that, and she's always just scared to death. That's the most fearful part of her race. And for me, that was the part I was going to be most comfortable with. And as we start rolling down, it's supposed to be a neutral start, which I think in your last podcast, you alluded to the fact that it is not a neutral start. It is a claimed neutral start. But I didn't know that. So I thought, you know what? There's a bunch of guys on mountain bikes that really aren't comfortable going downhill on pavement, going fast. I'm not, I'm just going to kind of stay wide and just kind of coast my way down and kind of get there. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I'm going to be going faster than my average anyway, because I knew a number I had to get to. Mm-hmm. And this is fine. And what I didn't realize was that for every person passing me as they pedaled like crazy, I was kind of getting myself in a log jam in the not too far distant future. So we go down and we make that right hand turn onto the Jeep trail. And as you said, it gets narrower, and it does. But it was still, plenty of room to ride. And then we start to climb up St. Kevin's. And I remember looking up and thinking, this is like just a river of people, or of actual helmets. All I could see were shoulders and helmets, people kind of riding and climbing. And it was just a sight I had not really ever seen.
It's surreal, isn't it?
I really kind of wanted to ride with my head up the whole time so I could just kind of watch that, because it was mesmerizing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the climb starts going, and we start going slower. And we start going slower, which I was kind of happy about because I knew my aerobic fitness wasn't where it needed to be. But I also started getting lancy because it really got into what is your most granny gear you could possibly be in so you can keep pedaling so you can stay upright. Because you're literally shoulder to shoulder with people, and you end up just watching the wheel in front of you. You can't even look up 2 or 3 riders ahead to see if somebody breaks, because it really, you've just got in trying to stay, it's like 6 inches behind the wheel in front of you. And at one point, the guy in front of me slowed for whatever reason. And I remember I went to try to clip out, but there really wasn't any, we were literally touching shoulders.
There was nowhere to put a foot down. Yeah.
I could put it down, and I was just kind of getting ready. I was like, I better put this foot down. I instinctively just kind of reached out and put my hand on the shoulder on the guy next to me, which was probably a mountain biking don't. But, and then all of a sudden then he had kind of so this is chain reaction. And then I kind of rode off, and I felt bad. And the guy rode up next to me and goes, don't feel bad about that. Like, okay.
That's awesome. I mean, that's a very cool thing to say. Yeah.
It was very cool. He passed me, but, it's just one of those, there were so many people. and so, start the climb, and it's kind of like that the whole way. And about halfway up, I can feel myself going into the red zone, just with the altitude, and think, you know what, I want to get over because I don't want to be the guy in the middle. I don't want to be the guy that's causing people. So I kind of get over, and there was a line of people already walking. I thought, you know what, I'm going to hop off, try to get the aerobic rate down, and then just kind of do that. And that was kind of my plan for the day. Just I knew if I went too deep into the red, I'd never recover.
Yeah.
And thankfully, on all those climbs, it wasn't like I was ever walking my bike alone. There was always kind of somebody around. And there's just kind of the shared misery that you had to push the bike up the hill. As I'd pedal in advance, the aerobic fitness wasn't there, and it just have to stop and try to just do the hike-a-bike thing and push the bike up. And I'm a guy that when I ride, I'm always calculating something.
Sure.
It's just kind of how my brain works. How far to the next marker, how fast am I going, kind of all those things. And I knew what I had to be, to get because I changed my goals tremendously during the week as I rode more and thought, what, I just want to finish this thing. So knowing that I had to be at 100 miles in 12 hours, 7.5 miles an hour, whatever. So I was pretty conscious of that number going in. And so I just kind of, no matter what I was doing, I thought, what, if I can stay above, stay around 8, that'll be a nice cushion. Walk until you get to 7.9, and then you just got to hop back on the bike, start pedaling again. Because I just didn't want to be slipping back. The issue with that, you guys have always talked about how your brain just starts to unwire itself, and you lose the ability to think.
Oh yeah, race stupidity. It happens
race
big
stupidity.
Time to all of us.
Yeah, and what I didn't do in my math was to get to the first cutoff, you have to average 10 miles an hour. It's 40 miles in 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And in my head, I was like, you know what? Just stay above 8. Just stay above 8. Stay above 8. And so I'm riding along, and as I'm riding down, I'm kind of getting close. I look at my clock and go, okay, I'm at 3.5 hours, and I thought, oh, I can't remember what the mileage was, but I thought I can do this. And then I realized and went, wait a second. To do that, I've got to go 20 miles an hour for the rest of the way to get there. And I thought, oh, crap, I have just bungled this, woefully. And it's that realization kind of, when you just like, at that point I knew no matter how hard I rode, I wasn't going to get there.
Yeah, you would have had to go as fast as you could on a good day on a road bike.
Exactly. And I just like, you know what, and I picked up the pace. It wasn't like I just sat up and kind of, soft pedaled my way in, but
sure, you make a good effort.
I knew it wasn't going to happen. Yeah. And so then as I came in the Twin Lakes station, there's lots of people around. And I knew I knew I'd missed the cutoff. And I thought, I wonder how this is going to go. Like in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, you think I can sneak past? Maybe they won't. Maybe if I go left, maybe they won't notice. I'm like, hey, look over there. There's a bear. But they've got a really good system. There was going to be no sneaking off. And so they kind of ushered me off the course. And I think it was like 4 people in the process. The first one, they just kind of usher you off, and you stop, and they ask you, are you okay? Do you feel okay? Mm-hmm. Are you sick? Was there a problem? Did you wreck your bike? And like, nope. And then you go to the next person, and they say, is there anything we can get you? Can I get you some water? Do you have chill? Just kind of every person has nothing to do with the fact that they're pulling you off because you didn't make a time cut. It was all about, are you okay? Yeah. Which was really super nice of them. I mean, they could just say, hey, buddy, off the trail. And then the last guy comes up, and he's got a pair of scissors in his hand, and he just walks up and goes, I'm really sorry. I've got to cut off your wristband. And he just kind of puts your arm out, and he's like, maybe next year. And I was like, yeah, maybe next year. And at about that point, I had seen, when he was walking up, I'd seen my wife kind of like, because she was your crew. My support crew. And so she came looking up, and she kind of looked at me, and I just kind of did raise my hand and shook my head. And she walked over. She goes, are you okay? I said, yeah, I'm just not skinny enough, and I'm not fast enough. And she's like, oh, wow, sorry. What are you going to say? There are no real words. So she's like, you stay here. I will get our stuff, and so she walked back to the crew point, And that's just kind of when I had my, 10 minutes of self-pity party.
You deserve that.
Oh, yeah. And I just thought, as good as I wanted to be and as triumphant as I had thought about it being when I crossed, I just wasn't going to be there, and I just had my 10 minutes, it's like, I feel really, really bad, and for 10 minutes I felt sorry for myself because I didn't do what I wanted to do. But then she walked back, she kind of looked at me, she goes, well, let's go. I'm like, actually, that's probably right. Let's go. So we walked back to the truck, and threw my bike on, and then we were driving back into town, and we saw a guy pedaling up the road with his Leadville number on. And we kind of looked at each other and thought, oh, I think he missed a time cut. And he's got a ride back into town. So we pulled over and, kind of said, hey, did you miss the cut? And he's like, yes. And I was like, well, you know what? So did I. Throw your bike on the back. And he'd come from Mexico.
Oh.
He and 2 or 3 buddies had signed up for Mexico and had come up, and he didn't know where his buddies were. He didn't know anything. He was just like, I wanted to come up, I wanted to ride, and I didn't get to finish. And then he's got tears in his eyes.
Sure.
He's showing us a picture of his son. He goes, I came here to ride for my son, and now he's thinking, I didn't do it, and I feel horrible. And so it was kind of nice to have that 5 or 10 minute ride back into town with somebody else that knew.
Yeah.
I mean, my wife knew I hadn't done it, and she could console me to a level that she could, but it was nice to have somebody in there that you felt the exact,
oh, yeah.
He knew what I was feeling and I knew what he was feeling. So that was kind of nice. And then we went back into town. It was time to shower up.
That kind of brings us to, I guess, where my day came in. Unlike you, I had the best day of my life, quite literally, in terms of bike racing. This was the year I finished in 8 hours and 12 minutes. And I wrote a little bit about what it was like to do the best ride of your life, be completely smoked, and what my experience was. And here, I'm just going to read what I wrote. There's rarely anyone at the finish line waiting for me. I expect that. They're still out on the course, cheering on others. That's fine. But I'm generally kind of messed up after a race, and it takes a force of will to take care of myself. Which brings us back to Dave, with the Samson hair. He hadn't had a great day racing, he'd missed one of the cutoffs, so he and his wife met me at the finish line, and they took it upon themselves to take care of me. One of them went and got bottles of water. I kept sending them back for more, eventually slowing down after I drank 4. While the other watched over me, while I watched down the road, hoping the hammer, my wife, would come in soon. I don't think I've ever appreciated help so much. I really, really hope Dave hasn't cut his hair yet, and that he grows it for another year, and then comes and tears this course up. It was huge what you guys did for me. I mean, I truly was not lucid. I was hopeful. I was excited. I was glad, and I was truly just barely able to walk and unable to think at all. I mean, to do that kind of race, it left me demolished. So, I don't know if I ever got a chance to say thank you. I probably said it a dozen times. Or maybe I said it 0. I can't remember much of that day, but thank you.
I think more like a dozen.
Okay.
Well, first of all, you're more than welcome. It was at least one thank you for every Coke and water bottle that we brought you, which, I had never seen anyone drink that much consecutively once. And after the second one, we started going back and just getting them in 2s. Just because there's he's going to drink it and it's going to take 15 seconds and he's going to say, can I have another one? And you were a mess. I mean, you came through that. I mean, the picture that you've got on, of you crossing, that's a great picture, and you were definitely a mess. And, as you said, I hadn't had a great day on the bike. We were staying at a house a couple blocks away, and went back, took a shower, and thought, well, I can hear the race. I might as well go out and experience. I want to watch people finish. I want to see people come across, and their last pedal stroke be what it is to get them across the line. I want to be there at 12 hours, and watch that person, the last 30 seconds and just giving it everything they've got and more than they think they have, as as Ken likes to say, to get across the finish line. And we were watching people come in, and then I knew you were looking for 8, and so we were kind of trying to pay attention. And they do a nice job there of calling people out when they see them coming up. And I think you were pretty much alone when you came up when you came up the red carpet, up the hill there towards the end. And I thought, well, let's just go over and see what we can do. I mean, I might as well be helpful.
Yeah.
I didn't ride well that day, and it was just, it felt perfectly natural to help somebody out that had, you had helped me out during the week with the training rides. You kind of given me some tips as you could. We talked about when to stand versus when to sit. Just a whole bunch of stuff that you probably don't even remember the conversations we had. And so I felt like, I got to give back a little bit, and why not? Sitting back in the room and sulking because I didn't, finish the race really wasn't going to do anybody any good, and I wanted to go and watch. So I was glad I was there. To be honest, I'm not sure you knew your name at that point. And so you'd have been fine, but I think it was good for you just to have somebody there to kind of talk to. And then when the hammer started coming up, we kind of let you go and said, you know what, we did our part, go enjoy, what she did. And, I don't think we saw each other again.
No, I don't think we did. So one more time. Thanks, Dave. And one last question. Are you going to come back and do this race again?
The hair is longer than it has been for a while. I did sign up for the very next year, but I didn't get in the lottery. I just went straight lottery. I did go back out the next June. I rented the same house and thought, I'm going to go out in June and do a hardcore training ride. So, so I've been back out. I've done the climbs. I went out with my nephew that next year, and we rode all the way to the top of Columbine, which I take that back. We didn't quite make it all the top. There was snowpack, so we had to turn around and come back, but it was close enough.
Right.
But we got to do kind of all that, and I remember doing those rides thinking, yeah, I'm going to come back at some point. I'm going to do this right. I'm going to get myself in a lot better shape. As you guys talked about, every pound makes a huge difference. So I'm going to come back as lean as I ever have, and we're definitely going to give it another go.
All right. I'm glad to hear that. Dave, it has been such a pleasure talking with you, hearing your story. So thanks so much for sharing it.
You bet, Fatty. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That's it for this bonus episode. In the next regular episode, a must-hear interview with Dr. Colin Grissom. He's a well-known pulmonologist with special expertise in exercise at high altitude. It's a practical, useful, information-packed episode that you're going to find will help you keep Leadville's secret sauce, the altitude, from getting the best of you. If you haven't yet subscribed to the Leadville podcast, please head on over to Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts and do so. Be sure to leave us a 5-star rating and a review. This is still a young podcast, so you doing things like this makes an enormous difference in whether other Leadville 100 racers and hopefuls can find us. For Hottie, I'm Fatty. Be sure to check back on Tuesdays for our regular show. In the meantime, train well, race hard, and we'll see you at the finish line this August.